Hi all, and welcome to the first episode of Movie Magpies. Today we'll be reviewing Annihilation. Let's just get into it.
Alrighty, I'm excited. We've been known to go off on tangents about this movie in the past, so
Yeah.
we've written a couple notes to try and keep ourselves on track, I suppose. I'm Monique, and my friend is Will. Will knows everything about movies, and I know nothing, so this will be very fun.
Yeah, it will. Just as like a bit of background, I have a bachelor's degree in film with a major unit in cinematography, so I'm a nationally recognized cinematographer in Australia. Just so
He
that
is a very smart man.
Just for a little bit of background, I also have a bachelor's degree in scientific research, which is unrelated but may become more related further down the line.
And I'm here to represent your average Joe. I have no degrees. I did a media course for like 2 years in college, and that's about the extent of my knowledge. I just really like talking about movies and dissecting them, so.
Yeah, but if anything, you're going to be far more grounded in this kind of series
You're
of
gonna be like,
reviews.
the Dutch angle was perfectly centered at 45 degrees, and I'm gonna be like, the lighting was cool. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, anyway.
should we get
So,
into the actual film?
yeah, we should. So, we're talking about Annihilation.
Um, 2018 film, which is sort of, I would call it cosmic horror, but it's described as science fiction horror.
Yeah, well, that all fits into the same wheelhouse. It's science fiction, it's horror. Cosmic horror is science fiction in a sense because until we find out if any of it's real, it's fiction.
Psychoschematic.
Sure.
A bit of a summary of things before we get into like spoiler territory. We will try our best to tell you when we're getting to spoilers. But as sort of an overview summary, I've noticed like rewatching the movie to do my notes that Oscar always looks sad, as in the actor. Always looks super upset, like just
Yeah,
all the time.
he's given very little to kind of go with. It's like in this situation you are sad. Go.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is how it's just run. But he's in a lot of like quite dire or dramatic situations throughout the
Yeah, I
film.
suppose that's fair. I just like I was rewatching and I was like, he always looks like someone kicked his puppy or like,
Mm.
and it's super interesting because a lot of the other main characters get to show a range of emotions, and then he's just like, I am either sad or like unhinged.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say before we started talking about characters and stuff like that, we just do like just a quick plot synopsis. If you haven't watched the film, then it'll give you a bit of a better insight into what we've been just talking about.
Look at Will being so smart. Basically, I suppose a summary of the movie without like reading the plot would be there is a woman who is ex-army um, biology professor, and her husband goes missing, turns up after a year of being missing with an unexplained illness, and they're taken to this secret facility where they found out that the reason that he's sick is because they went into this weird phenomenon that they've named the Shimmer, and she goes on a bit of a journey to figure out why he's sick and how she can fix it.
Yeah, and throughout the movie, they encounter great difficulty and strife, in which it follows the pathway of most Lovecraftian or cosmic horrors, in which, or even gothic horrors, where the narrator becomes more unreliable. Characters rarely make it out happy, or even like at least alive. Some will survive, some don't. But it's the kind of story that doesn't necessarily have a happy ending or even a conclusive ending.
Yeah, I would say less happy or sad ending and more just very open-ended, ambiguous, confusing type of
Yeah, I really
vibes.
like those kinds of stories. So
Yeah.
for me, when I first watched this movie, I really really liked it, and I still really like it. But yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
those things where it's a kind of story arc that really works well on its
Mhm.
own.
It is a really good story arc, although because of course, cosmic and horror elements in it, cosmic horror elements, I should say, we should give a bit of a warning for like gore and a lot of discussions on self-destruction and like self-destructive tendencies
Mm.
throughout our chat here.
We should get into our summaries. What did we actually like?
Look, I really, really love the like visual cinematography,
Cinematic.
cinematographic. Thank you. Shots in this, like there are so many really, really lovely parts of this movie, which you could screenshot and make like a very interesting print on your wall, or like a
Yeah.
background on your phone. They use visual shorthands pretty frequently, and I reckon that a lot of them are actually quite successful. There's a lot of really, really fun colors, and the overall sort of theme of the movie, while it's hammered home pretty heavily, it's still really interesting to think about, and it doesn't get like annoying.
Absolutely. I feel like the story, it remains consistent throughout the film, and it never like changes things or tries to divert away too much from what it's presenting, which is really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say one thing for me definitely that like stood out upon rewatching it was the music composition. I was really taken aback by how much it guides the atmosphere of the film throughout it.
Yeah, the music is really well done. I think I've only got like one note where I noticed the music shift in
Yeah.
a specific scene, and that speaks to itself and how well the music was done, to the fact that like it really, really complements the vibe, but unless I was looking for it, I couldn't like pick it.
It's super subtle. It's really simple in most parts of the film. It's super quiet or just generally subtle.
If it wasn't there, it would feel like something is missing, but because it's
Yeah.
there, it just helps build tension or vibe really, really, really easily.
Yeah, and like of course, the film in itself is so visually vibrant and packed full of such good visual like composition and stimulus that it still definitely needed that music and that the soundscape to make it all that more rewatchable and
Atmospheric?
enjoyable. Yeah, atmospheric, absolutely, but like just all the more enjoyable to watch on rewatch and multiple rewatches. It's more enjoyable to see purely because of the soundscape and because of the visual stimulus and the visual like composition.
Yeah, I will note another thing that you thought was really cool is you've put down like the performances of all the actors. Like,
Yeah.
I agree with you there. There wasn't any feelings of like campiness or awkwardness or like stilted dialogue. It all kind of flowed pretty well.
Yeah, I think every single character was really well acted, and all the actors brought a great deal of intricacy to their individual characters.
Yeah, there
For
was a
sure.
lot of like life behind the characters. It
Yeah.
didn't just feel like they were in there because they have to be there for the plot. Like, it actually felt like they were people.
Yeah, there was solid depth to each character, though actually when we start talking about stuff that we maybe didn't like, I'll bring this up more. But I do also feel like because the characters are so in depth and so just deep in their own characterization, we actually get very little character development and growth within the film, which I found to be a shortcoming of the film.
Yeah. If we're switching over into things that we didn't like as well, I would say that the timeline was a little annoying. Like, it's interesting the way that they use the timeline, but it overall, like, just because there are different rules for how the timeline works because it's cosmic horror doesn't mean that you can disregard rules entirely.
Yeah, sure. And for me, my original criticism of the character depth more came from the fact that we almost don't get enough time for the characters to exhibit traits and to grow or develop in their own time. We're kind of given pretty much like character sheets of who they are and then sent to move on, and like for the most part that's fine. These characters are on a mission. They're not gonna go through the various like character arc situations, or they're not gonna experience new situations beyond the new situation of the Shimmer and everything within the Shimmer, but there's no, it's not a variety of character developing moments, you know. This is just almost, in a weird way, just a single quest or a single slice of this world that we get to see.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's I have no words for this film. Like, I actually genuinely really enjoy it, but also have like a lot of nitpicks about it. So
yeah, I love the film, but then there's always like, if I were to criticize it, I'd have plenty to criticize, in a sense.
Yeah, that's probably a really good way to look at it. Is like, I would recommend this film to anyone, but if they were like, hey, what was up that? I would be like, oh my god, I know. Did you see this and this and this? They were super weird, like little bits of nitpicky. Like, it's easy to love and easy to hate, I suppose.
Yeah, and I like looking through reviews before we actually started recording this. This film is very mixed in terms of reviews. A lot of people like it, a lot of people really don't like it. One thing I did find surprising though is that in its opening like week, it failed to make its money back, which is usually a bad sign.
Really?
Yeah. So apparently, at the box office, it grossed about 32.7 million.
Yeah.
Oh well, no, total 43.1 million. Yeah.
Yeah, worldwide. Which is interesting because it the budget was around 40 to 55 million.
Yeah, so it didn't really make its budget
until
back.
It got like the sort of home release surge of income, I suppose, would be a good way to put that.
Yeah, and like in a sense it's a Netflix exclusive, so ultimately that kind of in a sense makes sense, but also it just, in pure and simple, it indicates that it just didn't do well enough at the start, and that's usually the closest indicator for success, where sadly like a lot of people really liked Annihilation, but it didn't necessarily kill it at the box office.
Yeah.
It didn't even make its money back, so ultimately it really didn't kill it at the box office, which is a shame, because I think more films should be made like this, even with its shortcomings.
Exactly.
Because arguably, it's still a pretty, like, even though it didn't make its money back, it's still a pretty damn good film.
Yeah, it's still a really, really good film, and I genuinely really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
It's super interesting, and I suppose this might be like a bit of a tangent in itself, but like why we believe that box office release and income is what determines success, because there are so many things that I can think of, like the term cult classic, for instance, is something that didn't do well but is still extraordinarily loved. So, and
in terms of financial speak, if you don't do well at the box office, your film failed. But in real life, you know, it's one little determinant of, you know, 1,000 different things. Do people identify with it? Do they identify with the characters? Did it affect them in some way? That's the stuff that actually really matters to the audience. And in that sense, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good film for giving people something to, you know, probably not necessarily enjoy, because it's quite quite grim.
Very unsettling.
Yeah, and unsettling is definitely a good word for it, but it's still something, you know, that you can really watch and rewatch, as we've said like multiple times before. It's, you know, the characters are great. They do things because of their experiences, and you may not know all their experiences, but it all still seems realistic to a certain extent. You know, I've got points on this later, but but all of them still act in certain ways. You know, we follow a group of scientists into the Shimmer, and one thing I noticed on rewatch that was really interesting to me was that only one of them, Lena, our main character, our protagonist, she has military experience. None of the rest have military experience, and so you'll see tiny little things like Josie, played by Tessa Thompson. She'll handle her gun like it's like, you know, just a stick that you pick up while hiking.
Yeah, like
there's a point in the film.
With it almost.
Yeah, there's a point in the film. Well, it doesn't play with it, but it's almost like unconsciously she doesn't recognize that this is, you know, a machine that can kill people. Yeah, and so she's like, using it to like hold doors open and stuff like that, where it's like tiny little things, and then other characters will carry them in ways that is a little dangerous, or probably not a good idea, like carrying them by the nozzle or the whatever.
Yeah.
But
That's a
that
really
just
good
makes their
pickup.
characters super interesting. I really like that.
It
It's
does
these
make them
little
super
things.
interesting. I actually have a note on that when we're
Yeah.
sort of more down into like spoilery territory, which I might just make a quick note of here, which is, something to talk about once we've gotten into the more spoilery stuff, because
Yeah.
it is a really like interesting plot point to me that I don't want to spoil without warning.
Yeah.
So.
If since we're still in the no spoiler kind of sections, a lot of that early stuff in the film doesn't spoil anything, but we're given so much through visual storytelling. Right at the start. Well, right at the start. This isn't visual storytelling. This is just straight up exposition, where Lena, our protagonist, is teaching at her university, and she's talking about. Well, she's teaching her students about cancer cells.
Yeah.
But it's this lecture is actually super important for the rest of the film, because it indicates that cancer cells in their infancy and their early generation they weren't designed to be bad things. They're cells that replicated too much, and then they just keep replicating.
And there's sort of this theory about, like, is the fact that eventually cells stop replicating a bad thing? Or is it what's natural? Like, there's that sort of discussion around it, which is super interesting.
Yeah, but the thing I really like about that is that one lecture lays the groundwork for the rest of the film, because, it's this film is so much about just the mitosis and the splitting and reflection of cells. And then we're introduced to one of her colleagues. On rewatching, I'm certain that like most people would catch this not on rewatch, because on a second viewing, because ultimately it's pretty clear, but nothing is said between the two of them other than like, oh, hey, we're having a barbecue, you want to come? And she's like, no, I gotta paint the bedroom. So much is said without being
bedroom.
said.
Yeah. Like, she goes, the bedroom, and it's like a super interesting, like, leaving things unsaid, show don't tell, is like, it's my favorite concept. But like, on first watch, you may not like sort of pick up on the whole story, but you know for sure that something's happening. Like, there's really, really uncomfortable vibes.
Yeah,
when
there's
you
something
first
between
see the scene
them.
with the co-worker. It, like, to me, the scene itself feels too long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it draws
but
out.
it just makes it feel like, it doesn't make it feel like it. Yes, the scene feels too long, but to me that just makes it feel more awkward. Like, it's laying into that, like, oh, there's tension here, that something happened, they don't really like each other. Like,
yeah, absolutely. There's this like standoffishness, but we're like right at the start of the film. I gotta bring it back just ever so slightly to Benedict Wong's character.
Oh my god.
So, like, we've just been talking about visual storytelling. I really hate the stuff with Benedict Wong in it, because it ruins all the visual storytelling. Because his existence in this film is purely for reinforcing that exposition. And it's heartbreaking.
I don't think that I refer to him, like, I think my first note says Benedict Wong, and then I'm pretty sure every other note that I have about him is just exposition man.
Exposition man, yeah. He like, it's even like really interesting that he doesn't do the exposition. It's just like every so often throughout the film, it just like cut back to Benedict Wong in a full body condom, asking a question that we've already asked and has already been answered, and like it's not Benedict Wong's fault.
No,
but
it was a really, really interesting way to use such, like, a well-known actor.
Yeah.
I feel like he's a well-known actor.
Well, yeah, and he's got a beautiful voice, so you almost don't feel like it's too big of a burden to hear him talk.
Like, on the first watch, whenever I heard his voice, I didn't feel, like, pulled out of the experience until, like, visually he was on screen, because it was such, like, a jarring snap between the two vibes of the movie. So, like,
absolutely.
using his voice was, like, a really good, like, idea.
Yeah.
It would have, to me, personally, been better as a voiceover instead of them, like, keeping, like, flicking back and forth.
I don't think it needed to be in there at all.
Well,
But here's
yeah,
the
but
thing.
if they really wanted to do it.
Here's the thing. I understand why it's there. Because, again, visual storytelling, it's not something everyone picks up on. And I'm not saying that people are stupid or anything like that. It's just that some people don't pick up on visual storytelling.
No,
And that's fine.
and I think another reason that it's there is just to reinforce that unreliable narrator trope in we're seeing things happen versus hearing
Yeah.
what the main character says about it. What's her name? Who
Lena.
does she play? Lena. Okay.
She's played by Natalie Portman.
I know. I wanted to call her Anya.
Yeah,
which
but
is a different character.
like my issue, yeah, Anya's a different character. My issue with that is just that, as I said, Benedict Wong's character, who I don't even know if we find out his name, but he never explains anything. He just asks the question for Lena to explain it. So the unreliable narrator thing, only like we've seen it through her perspective, and then we hear it again through her mouth.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing where I get that the film needs to ensure that people understand what's going on.
Like,
But-
it would have been much more, if you really wanted to use it, if you really wanted to push home that unreliable narrator,
Yeah.
it would have been better for her to say something or be in the scene, and then Benedict asks a question, and she says something that the audience can immediately pick as not quite right. E.g., he's
Yeah.
like, did you know how many days you were in there? And if she went, it felt like about X amount of days.
Yeah.
Whereas visually
7
we're
days,
thinking-
and then
Yeah,
we cut to
we're seeing that
in the
he has
Shimmer, and
no
she's like,
clue
"We've
how
been in
long
here
it
for
was."
4 days,"
Yeah,
Then sure,
or
but it doesn't.
we don't even
yeah.
know when we last slept.
It's
type
one.
of vibe.
It's one of those things where it's kind of just a little bit of a shame that it doesn't do that more.
Mm-hmm.
Where because the visual storytelling is just so good,
There's-
genuinely.
Another thing that I want to say is just the Shimmer is, visually, the Shimmer is so well done.
Oh, absolutely.
The storytelling of it, it's so vibrant and colourful and different.
Yeah.
It genuinely feels like you've stepped into a different world.
Yeah.
And they did that really, really well, while also keeping, the, more recognizable things, a old house, or a fence that's been broken down,
Absolutely. So we'll move forward to that point because we're currently just in the first 4 minutes of of the film. So when we get to the Shimmer, moving forward, Lena's husband, who had been missing for a year, just not magically, returns seemingly for no reason. And
it's a year later, and we don't even
Yeah.
see him enter the house. We just see him in the doorway of the bedroom as she's painting it, and
Yeah.
we're like, oh, hello.
Yeah, and then because I'm just using this as a bridge to get to the Shimmer, but she asks him a bunch of questions. He doesn't know a lot of the answers. He seems almost out of it. Then he starts having a super seizure where he's just coughing up blood. He's he's shaking. He's having an aneurysm.
The glass, because they do this really, really nice shot here just before he
Yeah.
goes into his medical seizure, which is he has a glass of water, and they focus on the glass. It's a very pristine, sleek glass of water. He picks it up and drinks from it, and as they put the glass back down, they pan to a shot that looks more on him instead of the glass. But if you're looking at the glass, you'll notice there's blood in the glass.
Yes, and it's the first.
It's so well done.
Yeah, it's the first indicator that something's wrong with him, and then, they take him off in an ambulance, and then the ambulance is intercepted by black SUVs. The classic secret, government kind of agency vehicle, and then they're transported to a security, to a research center somewhere.
Yeah.
We don't know where. I actually do know where, but that's for a segment a little further on that I'll talk about.
We cheated.
I did cheat. I know where it is, but that's not the point.
Yeah. But basically, even in that moment, the way that the ambulance is done, I think you noted this, was there's no sound.
Yeah, so we're left to as my old film lecturer would say, wallow in the atmosphere of drama, or not drama, of discomfort. So we get the scene where he's where he puts the glass down and there's blood in it, and then they notice something's going wrong, and there's no sound in that scene, so it actually crosses into the next scene where we see the ambulance move, but there's no sound in that scene. And it prolongs the agony of not knowing what's going on, what's happening to him, you know, all that stuff. And it's incredible because it's like, that's what you can do without sound, you know. You remove sound from something and it's incredible.
It's really, really amazingly well done. Like, I cannot praise this movie enough for their use of sound.
Well, here's the thing. You gotta make sound good. You can have a really ugly looking film with great sound and people will still enjoy it.
It's the kind of thing about, like, people say the same thing about typography, is good typography you won't notice.
But this also isn't discrediting sound as well.
No, yeah. But it's like, you won't notice good sound, but you'll always notice when the sound is off.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, it's not off. It's very much on. Like, it's good sound.
Yeah. So then moving forward, they're transported to a research facility by the
Lena, the character, pretty much accepts this as, like, the new normal.
Yeah, well,
really
actually,
quickly.
I've timestamped that, so 14 minutes in, which is actually still quite early in a film, she's met by a woman named Ventress, well, like, last name Ventress. Everyone's referred to by their last name or first name quite a lot. She's the mum from Atypical, if you've seen Atypical.
Yeah, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yes, her. She's great. She's got a really excellent presence in this film, but basically there's one line which I found really, like, stupid, where Lena was just like, I'm gonna need to see a lawyer, and Ventress is like, you're not gonna get to see a lawyer, and then Lena's just like, alright, cool, you know? She doesn't say it. Yeah, she just moves on. They just move on, and they're just like, cool. And there are, like, little points throughout the film where it's like, we need to progress the story, so just shut up and keep going.
Yeah, you do get a bit of, like, the movie magic stuff there.
Yeah.
But it also kind of leans to me, like, when I first heard that, I was like, oh, is that because she's, like, had, like,
it's
the background of her husband always going off on these, like, need to know, can't tell you where I'll be, like, missions. So she's just like, oh, okay, classified.
Yeah, and this occasion of it is, like, fully understandable, and it makes sense within the given world.
Yeah,
but it is still noticeable.
Frantically also like, alright, no lawyer, where the fuck is my husband?
Yeah.
You know?
But then this leads us up to the Shimmer, where we're introduced to it for the first time, and just like the ambulance scene, one thing I really loved about it was that you actually hear the Shimmer first. And the sound of the Shimmer is introduced to us in that scene, and then we cut to, well, footage or visual of the Shimmer.
Yeah,
but it's obscured, which is really a really interesting choice, and it really works for it. But then you get to see it in full, like, after getting a little bit of an understanding of the surroundings and the research facility, because in like an establishing shot kind of system, you see the Shimmer for a little bit, and you're like, that's what's making the noise. It's this weird thing.
You're like, oh,
but then we also
like
know where we are.
Subconsciously, that's the noise type of vibe.
Yeah.
But then, like, what they really do well with the Shimmer is something that they visual shorthand. I really love the visual shorthand in this movie. The growth of the Shimmer is, like, just a screen. And, like, one screen is, like, has it at a certain size, and then the next screen is, like, X amount of days or months later. I wasn't paying attention to the actual dates. And it's exponentially bigger. And I'm like, ooh, it's growing. Like, that's exciting.
And it's like the only way we could physically see this ultimately monolithic bubble of evil or not good expand is through a way that we can see it from a larger scale, and that's really well done. I really like that.
It's so well done. I also really like that they went, like, a different direction. Like, a lot of movies, even, like, cosmic horror movies do this. It really annoys me. They make everything that's bad really dark and, like, hard to see.
Yeah, it's easier, though, in a sense.
Yeah, and whereas this one, they've made the Shimmer vibrant, colourful, very easily, like, visually shorthanded, the growth of it. Like, they've done a lot of things to make it much clearer while still keeping the, like, mystique about it, which was really well done.
Absolutely. And it also has this incorporeal kind of essence to it, where it's just a thing that's just expanding. You can't stab it. So,
Yeah,
or
and
you can't
seeing
shoot
it
it, and
also
it's
makes me feel like I kind of want to know like what would happen if you stick your hand in it. Like it's got that
yeah,
very like this is something that is just like a barrier. But
mm,
also what would happen if I just touched the barrier a little? Like is it
yeah,
corporeal? Is it physical? It kind of looks a bit like bubbles. It kind of looks a bit like it has like a gooey consistency to it. I really enjoy
yeah.
the visual.
It's got this presence that's just a little bit curious. It has this looming threat kind of vibe to it as well, more so than the curiosity for sure. But then it creates this morbid kind of curiosity where you
Yeah,
kind
it's
of want to know
very
what's
like
going on.
unusual and unknown, and then added in with the tone of the film and the fact that it's growing exponentially and they don't know how to stop it and they don't know what's in there. Very scarily unknown. Like it goes
Yeah,
from, oh, let's explore that to, oh, let's figure out what that is. And
yeah.
it's really well done.
In a sense, there's like no, because no crew has left the Shimmer. Only one person has left, and that was Kane, Oscar Isaac's
Mhm.
character, or Lena's husband, is the only one who ever left. There's no way of knowing what's in there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's really great because it's just this threat of the unknown that's constantly expanding and getting closer and closer to civilization, which is, yeah, this huge threat.
Yeah. And like then we don't get to like obviously the plot of the movie, Lena decides to go into the Shimmer.
Yeah,
But we don't get that sort of like decision moment until she's already met the team that's going into the Shimmer, which I thought was very cool.
yeah,
Um, she sort of goes and like she sneaks in to visit her quarantined husband.
yes.
Why is it not better quarantine? It's just my
Quarantine's
first
not
nitpick.
great, no.
It's like, the guard is asleep.
Yeah.
She just sneaks in there.
Basically, Kane is being kept in a holding cell, but it's got like a clear tent.
Yeah, it's got like a little plastic tent in it.
Yeah.
But that like she doesn't have to unzip anything. She doesn't have to
No.
like there's no like whooshing of like sealed doors opening. She's just like in the room.
Yeah, it's very casual about quarantine.
If anybody knows anything about like medical information, there was like this tube
Oh, right,
that
yeah.
was like made of like a really it looks like a soft crinkly plastic tube like something that you would take off a straw. And it's
I still think that was just a covering.
yeah, what is it just a covering?
I
Is it
think it just
supposed to
covers
do
a,
something?
I think it just covers an actual tube.
It really annoyed me. Like I
Yeah,
sat there and
I know it
when
did.
I
Yeah.
first saw this film for the first time, Will was sitting next to me and I was just like, what's up with the tube?
Yeah.
I wouldn't let it go.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's yeah. But ultimately the whole quarantining of this guy who the only person to have left the Shimmer, it's just not very well done. He's in like a little clear tent with the zipped door partially unzipped. Sure, everyone around him is in like full body condoms, but like
they're
every
also
time every
asleep
time
and
Lena has
not guarding
visited him,
properly.
yeah, every time Lena has visited him, she hasn't been in one of them.
Mm-mm.
So, you're just like letting someone carry whatever pathogen in and out. And ultimately, I'm sure everyone these days understands that you gotta properly quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Wear a mask if you're sick, kids.
Yes.
But yeah. Then we come to sort of one of my favorite scenes, which is her meeting the rest of the group. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of gets a little iffy on the timeline here, just because one of the comments made by a character called Anya, who is played by Gina Rodriguez,
Yes.
she's like, "You're always here," or "I always see you here," or
Yeah.
something like that. And I'm like, wait, what? Sorry? What do you mean? How many
Yeah.
days has she been here? Like,
So this is a point where the timeline starts to get a bit iffy because they haven't even entered the Shimmer yet. And we have no idea how long Lena's been at the research facility. And it's a little bit weird, for sure. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a future thing that I'm going to be talking about, but like we'll do that after spoilers because there are,
Yeah.
I'm going to dip into spoilers when I do this stuff.
Exactly. And I think one of my favorite parts about this is just the fact that she like says that and then they immediately start like, "Oh, what's your like what are you here for? Like you a scientist, you a soldier?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm a biologist, and they like start passing money around the table because they were
Yeah.
making bets on like what her profession was. I thought that was really like, it was a very real moment between all the characters,
Mm.
and it sort of showed that they had already known each other for a little while, and Lena was definitely the new person coming in.
Yeah.
It also helped them pass the Bechdel test, so
Yeah, the very important Bechdel test. For
Bechdel.
sure.
Ha,
Bechdel, yes.
my bad.
But yeah, it is for all this film is, that still does a great deal of good in creating just a story that is just watchably good and contains just, wow, I've just worded this terribly, but
No, it's fine. I can't word things ever. Just keep going.
it's a film that has, it doesn't make a big song and dance about having the main grouping of heroes and protagonists just be all women, and all women
Yeah,
scientists as well. It doesn't.
It's very watchable. It's very,
Yeah.
oh, this is our group of scientists, not this is our group of women scientists. Like, there's not the, ooh, look, our main character is a lady. Like,
Yeah.
they don't do any of that. It's literally just like, main character wants to fix her husband. Look
Yeah.
at this cool group of people she's going with. Like,
It doesn't pat itself on the back for doing that, which is, I mean, great. Good for them, I think, in a sense, because it just makes the story more easily viewable, because there's not some sort of hidden agenda within it.
yeah, exactly. And while, Lena has this whole thing about the only reason that she's doing this is for her man, like,
Yeah.
a lot of the other characters are just going in. They're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever.
And they have their own reasons, which is good, fair enough.
I like that it's
yeah.
not all just centered around, we have to figure out what happened to this one person. It's like, they each have their own individual reasons for going in.
Yes.
And they all sort of keep those to themselves until later on.
Until it's revealed later on, those kinds of things. I think we're getting to like the close to the end of our non-spoiler chat.
Yeah, I think we might put a warning for spoilers here. We're about
I was going to just say quickly, just the last few points before spoilers and stuff. Like, the film pays a great deal of attention to continuity. And one of these examples is Josie's backpack is attacked by a crocodile once they reach the Shimmer. Once they get into the Shimmer. And then later you see it, like, patched up with duct tape. And it's, like, little things that you don't have to do. But it's really nice that you do them.
I didn't even notice that. That's such a cool little detail.
But it's this continuity stuff that I really, really like. Just like how, because they're a big group of scientists who mostly don't have military experience, they handle guns in a different way, or a weird way. And many of them don't necessarily know how to navigate normally, and that's why when they enter the Shimmer, which are also just a big point before we move on to spoilers, what's really cool is that a lot of the color scape for before the Shimmer is very like simple colors, and it's a simple color palette, and then
it's not dull.
No, it's not dull, not in any way.
Like, it's a really nice color palette, but then when they transition into the Shimmer, it feels dull in comparison. It's really, really well done.
But we, like, the first bit of the Shimmer we actually get to see, because they enter the Shimmer and then, like, days go missing and they can't remember what happens. The first hint of the Shimmer that we actually get is Lena inside her tent, and we're given just a single primary color, just yellow, and then she leaves into the vibrant, like, colors and lights of the Shimmer, and it's the yellow of the tent is like a really nice, like, palette cleanse. And then we get the vibrance, so it never feels overwhelming, because if we went from straight, like, the single colors and the single simple palette to the vibrance of the Shimmer, we would have been like, oh fuck, that's a lot.
Yeah, my eyes.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. Fuck this.
It's like, when you're watching a movie and they go from like something really, really dark to like a bright white room, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah, it would be a bit much. But it's super nice.
I didn't even notice that they did that, but like, yellow is always such like a happy, or like...
it's the universal color.
Yeah, it's the universal, like...
It's a primary color, but it's a nice color to cut to, or to look to, because as long as it's not pulsingly bright, it actually serves as a nice...
It's not like neon.
Yeah, it serves as a nice flat set color to start from. A lot of films use yellow in some sort of variation, and it's great. That's why I refer to it as the universal color.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's not an actual thing. It's not an actual term. I like yellow a great deal, and that's
I just
why.
full on accepted that was just like cinematography.
No, it's not. It's me. It's me. I really like yellow, and I think yellow's a really good color to use regularly in film and photography and all that shit. For the clear reason that I don't think anyone's like, I hate yellow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not important. We'll talk about yellow further on and to death, So at this point, we'll just have like a tiny little intermission. If you haven't seen the film, go watch it now if you don't want anything spoiled, because we're going to start spoiling things.
We're getting into spoiler territories, kids, and we are... Yeah, this is just the time to, if you are intrigued by the film, if you like what we're talking about and want to see it for yourself, you can find the film on Netflix. So
yeah,
you can
it's on Netflix. It's pretty easy to get your hands on as well. I think you can find it on DVD at certain places. In Australia, we have a place called JB Hi-Fi. Their whole color scheme is yellow. So really, Jesus. If you go to a JB Hi-Fi, buy Annihilation, tell them Will sent you. Okay, and that's not going to mean anything right now. No. But in 100 episodes' time, they're going to be like,
anytime anybody mentions yellow, or we say really well done, or the words well done, just take a drink of water, because we're going to be here for
Hydrate
a while.
yourself, yeah.
Hydrate anytime you hear us say really well done, or mention the color yellow.
Yeah, but anyway, so spoilers have been warned. You have been warned. Don't watch on or listen on if you don't want it spoiled. Yeah, go watch it. It's it's not the longest film in the world, but it's not short either. No. So
I don't think any films can be counted as short these days.
Yeah, I guess not. But but I'm gonna start with the spoiler chat with one of my sections, which is Will's pointless research.
Oh, so I'm gonna start that.
So I've got two of these for this movie. Gonna start with this one because it actually makes a little more sense with the early stuff that we've been talking about.
Yep.
So, right at the start, when Lena is painting her house, Kane walks in through the front door and then just comes straight up the stairs. They live in... Supposedly. But, so first question, which I'm actually not going to answer in this, how does he get inside? Surely she would have locked the door.
Surely she would have locked the door. Surely she would have heard him walking up the stairs. He kind of just materializes in the bedroom doorway.
Yeah, but I need that to not be true for my research to work. So I'm gonna predict
Ignore it.
I'm gonna predict that he didn't materialize, because that also doesn't make in my research that makes less sense than what I've looked at. So, as far as we know, Kane reached the lighthouse, which is the location of where the asteroid or meteor hit the Earth.
The point of contact.
We know for certain that he definitely got there.
Home site,
yeah.
Ground zero,
yes. Among many other terms. But we also know he got home to Lena. This implies, because also he didn't go through the research base, so this implies that he evaded detection from the research facility outside of the Shimmer, which means, actually that's pretty easy to do because it's one building. He could have gone a multitude of ways and missed them completely. However, we know that Lena and Kane live in Baltimore. Sorry, I almost said Baltimore.
We love that.
Baltimore, because she teaches at Johns Hopkins University. She says that very early on. We know based on their conversation in bed that Kane would be located in the same hemisphere, so that narrows it down a little bit of where he could have gone, or where the location of the lighthouse could actually be. So I cheated. I didn't actually guess. So the geographical location of the lighthouse that they shot at was actually located at Holcombe Beach, which is in England. The distance from England, or the Holcombe Beach to Baltimore is about 5,766.7 kilometers, which is quite a long way. This is about a 10-hour and 25-minute flight, which means it would have taken him at least 11 hours for the separation from the Shimmer to cause him to start dying.
Yeah, and even then, like 11 hours is like a very, very frugal measurement, because the second that he left the Shimmer, you would assume that was separation.
Well, yeah,
Like,
but
how did he get, like, then he's gotta walk places.
yeah,
He doesn't have a car.
but I've been very kind in that he would have had to have taken a flight to get there, because he would have had to have crossed an ocean to get home.
I know.
And in a sense, with what we know, with what we've seen from how he spoke with Lena at the dinner table, that must have been a nightmare for like the person at the check-in to the airport.
What flight are you getting on?
I don't know. Can I have your passport? I don't think I have it. Why?
What's a
I don't
passport?
know. Yeah, just staring into Oscar Isaac's eyes as he just, stares you down.
See Oscar looking incredibly sad and slightly disheveled and be like, "It's okay. Just get on the plane."
That seems really irresponsible of you.
I'm an irresponsible individual.
Yeah, but you just let some guy.
No,
Sure.
not just some guy. Oscar Isaac.
Well, technically, in this universe, we have no idea if Oscar Isaac exists in this universe. He's Kane. He's a guy in military fatigues, walks up to you at the check-in looking for a ticket for a
Is
plane.
this
and
really
he's
the
just
part
like,
of my topic that we're going to nitpick? Not the fact that for this to even be, like, considerable, he would have had to fly there. Which,
Yeah.
then, if you think about it,
Worst case scenario, he swam, which
how
is
did
worse.
he not die before he got back to the base? I
Yeah.
feel like...
Well, this is the point of my pointless research. It doesn't change anything. He got there. In the face of the film, he got from the lighthouse to Lena's place and didn't die on the way. So it doesn't matter about this research. But I thought it'd be fun to look it up and look into it. Because, yeah, I genuinely think it's just like, how do you get there?
Look, the time and just they use like a time warp system, and they explain that they're warping the time system. But like I
Sure.
said, just because you're using like different rules for time doesn't mean that you can not have rules. Like you still have
Yeah.
to follow rules. They're just not rules known to normal individuals.
Yeah, exactly. If the director, what's his name? I know his name, Alex Garland. If the director Alex Garland said to me, "Look, someone gave Kane a lift," I'd be like, "Cool, I get it. That's good.
Mhm.
That's good enough for me. I don't
Yeah,
care."
I really want to read, like, with any movie, you kind of have to have a suspension of disbelief at some point. Like, that's
Yes.
just how plot expediency works.
Yeah.
I would really be interested on reading the book that was written
Yeah.
by Jeff
So would I,
Vandermeer.
actually.
Yeah.
And I probably will read it after
Oh, dude, I'm still looking it up.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But, yeah, no, this whole, like, hence why it's called Will's Pointless Research. I'm just looking it up because I wanted to. I thought it'd be curious.
And so, like, we move into this whole thing where, they're in the Shimmer, they don't know time frame, none of their equipment works. There's this whole thing where Ventress is like, we weren't expecting any of the equipment to work. Come on,
Yeah.
use your heads. Like, type of vibe. And we quickly established that out of this pair of 5, is it 5? Yeah, out of this
yes.
pair of 5 ladies, there's 3 that stand out as, like, specifically experienced or, like,
Yeah.
competent, which would be Shepard.
Yes.
Who plays Shepard again?
I don't know.
Cassie Shepard is played by Tuva. I don't want to try and pronounce her last name. Novotny.
Okay.
And like we immediately see that Shepard, Ventress, and Lena are like the most competent. It seems that Anya and Tessa Thompson's character Josie
yeah.
Radek
Yeah.
is they're like, oh, nothing works, like the compass is all weird, what's going on? Well, that's
Yeah.
super interesting. Like they seem very much more like, as a scientist, this is terrifying and dope. Whereas
Yeah.
the other kids are like, all right, let's get our bearings, where are we going, like how long have we been here, have we eaten rations? Like they're very on top of what have we done, even if we can't remember doing it, how can we
And-
get oriented?
Yeah, in that sense, like, Anya, she's a paramedic who was brought there. And then Josie was a student of physics, like a physics student who was brought straight out. So
Like, she was literally fresh out of her, like, bachelor's or something.
Yeah, and ultimately that's like they're the least experienced members of the group just purely because they have the least academic and life experience out of the rest. And what I find interesting, since we've passed into spoilers, is they're the ones who are the most affected by the Shimmer.
Yeah. I mean, I slightly, a little bit, argue that Ventress was incredibly affected by the Shimmer even before she got into it. But that's because she is, I think her, like, specialty is psychology.
Yes.
And she's the one that picks the teams. Like, she said this.
Yeah.
She's the one that picks the teams that go in. And she's only ever seen the one lad, Oscar's character, come out. So, like, to me, she's been affected by the Shimmer from the start, which means that the fact that she's affected inside goes relatively unnoticed because she's already in this mentality of, I've sent so many people in there to essentially die, we don't know what happened to them, and now it's my turn to go in and try and figure out what's going on, you know?
Yeah, well, I feel or think that it's more so that the way it affects her outside of it is because of her nihilistic outlook. The only information we're given on her is that she has no friends or family, and she kind of volunteered to go into the Shimmer.
Yeah.
Later on, we find out that she had, like, late-stage cancer as well. So, to me, I kind of see it definitely as a link of the only reason that I believe that she wasn't actually more heavily affected by the Shimmer is because she went in there with a singular purpose, knowing that she wouldn't come back out.
Yeah, she went in with nothing to lose and an acceptance of death, basically.
Pretty much, and I think that's why she's not affected in the same way that Anya and Josie are.
And this is just probably a good time to bring up, this is another reminder that we did actually give some warnings at the start about self-destructive tendencies.
Yes.
And gore warnings, which we will be getting into now that we're in spoiler territory.
I will say, like, one of my first notes, it's not important, but I caught on second viewings, right at the start. They play this one song, which is the only one with lyrics, and there's one line in it which is "We are two alone and three together," and I thought that was really clever because on second viewing you catch it instantly, where you're just like, "Oh shit, that's
sure."
That's.
I didn't catch the music
catch
at
it?
all.
Oh.
I was just so enamored. Like, the only time I catch the music actually is when they're fighting the croc.
Yeah.
And like they turn around and like they're firing bullets and it's really loud, and then for whatever reason they just like fade away into like no noise from the bullet noises, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, that's the one part of the music that I really noticed.
Absolutely. But yeah, for me, I noticed this lyric specifically because it relates directly to the story.
Yeah, like, two alone, three together is really interesting when you figure out, like, you know, the fact that Kane wasn't really Kane when he came out of the Shimmer, and, like, Lena comes out of the Shimmer, but she's ultimately changed, and together they're both, like, the Shimmer is now a part of them. Like, they've been fundamentally and almost, like, at an atom level changed by the Shimmer.
Yeah, but moving through the story of the film, we find that each member of the group of scientists that volunteers to go into the Shimmer have done so for their own reason. You know, for Josie, she had been suicidal for a great period of time.
There's a really, really interesting thing there where I think it's Shepard specifically who's telling Lena about like what everybody has with them. So she's the one that brings it up. And it's like Lena questions, she goes, "Oh, suicidal," and Shepard goes, "No, I think it was more to feel alive or like to feel something," which was really, really interesting. It sort of leans back into that like self-destructive tendencies. Everybody who went in for a reason, and that reason seems to be that they're all damaged goods.
And just to fill out the set, Anya, you know, just to indicate or provide context for the others, Anya was an ex-addict. Well, she had an addiction to something.
Yeah, I think she was like an alcoholic, substance abuse, I think. Was what they said.
Yeah, Ventress, we already know she
late stage cancer, no friends, literally married to her job, and obviously Lena is the fact that her husband is so heavily affected by this thing.
And Shepard, her daughter, had died. as well, just to
Yeah,
indicate.
and oh gosh, the in a way it's two losses, mourning my daughter and the person I was before I lost her. Like that was a
Yeah.
really, really lovely line. Like the dialogue is so well done in this movie.
So all this stuff is revealed in a boat scene in which they're paddling up the stream. My problem, like, I really like this scene too because we're given a good insight into it. But my problem with it is that this is the only bit of characterization we get for any of them.
Yeah, except for Lena. Lena gets a bit more.
Lena, yeah, but that's just because she's the main character.
She's the main character. It
Yeah,
doesn't count.
exactly. It would be weird if that was all we got for her, but it's like, it's this one thing where it's like, I really enjoyed it because it was this strong moment of getting to find out what gives these characters a foundation in why they're here. But we're told it in one trip up the river.
It would have been nice to sort of see it spaced out, or maybe like for it to happen just before or after each of the like individual people had their like big moment where they either die or go missing.
But also I find it like one of the little bit like staggering parts or the jarring parts for me was also that we're told this by Shepard. So we're given insight into the secrets of each of these characters from one character.
Yeah,
and we never get the opportunity to see them reveal it themselves.
Yeah, they don't get to reveal it themselves, but also it gives Shepard this very like wise, sage mother to the group type of feel.
Yeah.
Which then they kind of don't really bring up again. They kind of just drop it. Like there's
it's
not like, oh, she's saying, they're like, oh, it gives this feel of she's saying it because she's trying to make Lena feel like she's not the only one that came in here with like something that she's lost, or like feeling like the big, oh, my husband just died and I'm throwing myself into this possibly lethal adventure. But it's weird that she would tell her, oh, it's fine, everybody here has trauma, as like a way to comfort her.
Sure, yeah. And in that respect, it's good, it's fine, it's ultimately, doesn't ruin anything in any sense, and it provides a good background into our characters. And quite early on too, because it's not really that far in.
It's one of those things where first watch, you won't like pick it up. You'll be like, oh, okay, and you'll focus more on the fact that it gives you depth to the characters rather than how it was provided and how that's a bit weird. Like, I think one of my favorite things to say about this movie is that it's really, really good if you don't look too hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really enjoyable film if you don't look way too hard and have to nitpick it for a podcast.
If you're not analysing it and taking notes on it specifically to pull it apart.
That being said, I still really enjoy this film, so it doesn't matter if I nitpick it.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that can just turn my brain off and like forget about all the nitpickies because I like the film, so.
Yeah.
It's picky.
But yeah, so like we're given insight into these characters, we move on, we get to where we spend what feels like we spend the majority of the film is the scout station, or the
it's like an old abandoned military base.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of background about the fact that they were camping here before the Shimmer started growing past it. And so they've evidently then it is one nitpicky thing that I always sort of thought every time I hear them be like, yeah, we were here, and then the Shimmer got bigger and we had to evacuate. I'm like, why did you build such a big fucking building? If you knew that you were always going to have to keep moving, why not just have something transportable?
No, I think the military base was there prior to it wasn't built there before the Shimmer.
Oh, okay. I was under the
no. I think it had been there for, and then that's why I think it's a scout station, or something like that. But then again, it wouldn't have a pool. So if it were a scout station, so I think it was like a military base or something like that. But I think it existed there long before the Shimmer.
Training camp or something.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah, it was more the newer base, the one that they start at before they go into the Shimmer. That to me feels like something they built for the Shimmer because it's so modern and boxy when you get a big thing of it, and I'm like, why would you camp there if you know it's just going to exponentially grow?
Yeah, no, I don't think they built that there.
It's fair.
before the Shimmer, because that's, I think way too close, because it's only like a few days away from the Shimmer or something like that.
One of the things I really love about this is how much they drive home like that mutation and the fact that she says it like the doubling pairs or something, basically.
Yeah.
2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, like, and it exponentially, however many there are, they're all gonna double.
Yeah.
And so the bigger it gets, the faster it gets bigger.
Yeah, and I think where we see this in full strength at first here, where it's actually starting to really get strong. You see it like early on where flowers and plants are starting to develop, and like by a certain extent, the crocodile that attacks Josie has it because it's moving around and being affected by it in different potencies. But you actually get to see it really strongly here, and then we're also given insight into Kane's group. This is the first real
lovely little SD card.
Yeah, this is the first instance where we actually get to see the group that came before the group of scientists, which it was Kane's group.
And it was really interesting. I think you might agree with me here on Will. It's quite a gory scene. Like, it's actually, when you get into the tape, basically what happens is it's this visual of them all in, like, dark. It's like there's watery noises around of them cutting open.
Yeah, it's super unsettling.
Yeah, it's super unsettling. One of the, like, soldiers' stomachs, and then they pull out his organs, and they're moving and slithering like a big snake. But it doesn't, to me, when I first watched it, it didn't feel like gore. Like, it was, they sort of ease you into it. When he first puts the, like, knife to skin, it sort of cuts away to the girl's reactions to, like, a second to breathe. It focuses a lot on Kane's face and the sort of very unhinged, insane, reverent expression that he has, and, like, things like that. Rather than being like, boom, blood, gore,
Because if anything, we're not really even focused on what's happening inside this soldier's intestines, which are, you should have seen it by now, but the intestines are like moving.
Like a big snake.
Yeah, what I find, I think the reason why it doesn't feel quite as gory is because it's not necessarily about the intestines. It's about watching Kane's descent into insanity, where you see him.
They don't just end on the gore.
No.
They like have this whole moment where the soldier's like, you need to stop, and like Kane very like reverently and very like carefully like kisses his forehead and then like hold him down, and you're like, oh, okay. And then they don't end on the gore either. They have like a moment where whoever's got the camera pans to Kane and he's like reverently washing his hands in the water.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so they're crazy.
Yeah, so these people have gone mad. Great.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to me as well, out of all of the reactions that we see, the medical expert, Anya, is the one that has the biggest sort of denial of it. She's like, that can't happen, it was a trick of the light, like, I've seen everything, I've like scraped people off the side of the road, that shit does not exist. Like, she's very adamant about the fact that couldn't have happened. Yeah,
she comes across as certain that what they just saw didn't actually happen. And I think this is the first instance of Anya starting to descend. However, for me, it's also the first moment where I start to dislike Anya's character a lot more. Because, like, she is so adamant about what them seeing on the tape wasn't real, and then she's insistent that she doesn't want to see it again.
Yeah, like, they're like, well, why don't you just double check? Like, we all saw what we saw. And she's like, no. Yeah,
she's just angrily no, I'm not watching it again. It didn't happen. And it's just like, can you, it's like...
For me, I suppose for you that makes her an annoying character. For me, that's a very understandable reaction. Like, I would be that person where Will knows this because he's watched several movies with me, but like, the second that anything slightly painful seems to be happening on screen, I'm like, no, ouchie, uncomfy. And everybody's like, are you scared? Like, do you not like horror? And I'm like, no, I'm just thinking about how painful that would be, I don't want to, and then like people are like talking about it, or like they're like, oh, can you imagine how much that would have hurt? And I'm like, no, I don't want to hear it. Actually, I'm okay. Just move past it. So to me, that was like relatable in a way. Very, very... It was just a little too over the top, I suppose, her reaction.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably what made it so, like, noticeable for me, was that she was so adamant about it, in that she was just shouting that she didn't want to watch it again. She also was shouting that it wasn't moving, it was just a trick of the light and stuff like that. And I was just like, I'm a very quiet person, and I always feel like I guess I have an innate disdain for people who regularly shout.
And yet you're friends with me.
Yeah, but you don't, like, just shout for no reason, I think. But it's one of those things where it's just like, if you're shouting, it's just going to make you seem irritating. Yeah. In a situation where you could be a little bit more reasonable about, like, the situation.
They've come into this area and they knew weird shit was probably happening.
Yeah.
And it's just such a very aggressive outburst, especially because of how, like, slowly they eased you into the gore and, like, made it, like, less about the gore and more about the soldiers and how they were reacting to it.
Yeah.
To suddenly turn around and be like, oh, look, a shouty woman, you know?
Yeah, but I also feel like this is like a trigger point for Anya's character, in that this is a starting point where from this moment on she actually becomes
super unhinged.
Well, not unhinged. Yes, she starts to unhinge and all that, and she starts to slowly lose her mind. But she actually becomes more at that point she stops being cooperative within the group. In that whatever she wants to do, she has to do it. And as we'll move on, I'll start to point that out a little bit. But we're also given, like, at this point, we're also given an insight into more reason as to why Lena is doing what she's doing for Kane, and it's because she had an affair while he was gone.
Yeah, the flashbacks are super interesting.
Yeah.
The flashbacks with the affair specifically, like the first one, there's no, like, dialogue. They just start.
You just see the two people involved, Lena and the professor, the colleague from her university.
Surprise.
And then you're just like, oh god, if you like picked up on the signs that there was something between them, you're like, I knew it.
Oh, that's what it was, yeah. Less, oh, I knew there was something there, and more, oh, so that's why there's tension.
Yeah.
And another thing that I would say about this is, with these sort of like affair things, you've also got flashbacks to her being happy with Kane. Kane has an accent in the flashback, and it's kind of really jarring to me on the second watch. Like, the first watch, I didn't pick it up as much. I'm sorry, I feel like my tone is getting louder as I get heated.
You're all good.
Like, the second time I was watching it, I was like, whoa, he has an accent. Because he doesn't in the current day, which evidently when you get to the end of the movie is because it's not actually Kane. But, like, when I was watching it back, and obviously because I knew that they were two different characters, I was looking out for differences, and one of the differences is the accent. Yeah,
the accent changes, because the copy doesn't have the years of life experience that the other Kane does, which would shape an accent in a certain way. And, like, I can attest to this because, you know, we're both Australian, but I spent a great period of time surrounded by English people, so my accent is a little flatter.
And because my family is Dutch, I always get asked where my accent is from. Like, a lot of Australians who hear me, especially over the phone, don't initially clock me as Aussie.
Yeah,
because I have a weird way of pronouncing certain words.
I think we can both attest to just how much experience alters
the people
life experience
that you're around,
alters a language or an accent. Yeah.
Even how you, like, learn and what your original, like, initial language is, like, your native language, changes the way that your accent will eventually sound because of the way that, like, cultures choose to, like, use vowels and stuff like that. It's super interesting. And it's also one of my, like, little bits that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're different.
But yeah, it's one of these super little things that if you pick up on it, it enriches the story to a great deal, which in this film there are so many of these little things that are great. They're just super awesome to see.
It's super funny because we keep saying this is a really, well, I've said it's a really good movie if you don't look too hard at it, but then when you look at it, you're like, oh, look at all these little, like, Easter eggs and, like, continuities.
If you don't look at it with a critical eye, then there are some really awesome bits in it, and...
If you look at it as, like, a Where's Wally type of vibe, where you're just trying to...
Yeah, the easiest distinction to make is if you don't look at it looking for negatives, then you're not going to find a whole lot of negatives.
Yeah, if you're there specifically to have fun and you're pointing out the things that you think are interesting or well done, you'll see them more. Which is the same as, like, if you drive a red car, you'll see more red cars on the road because you unconsciously look out for them.
But getting back to the the film with the affair now in our mind's eye and our knowledge, Oscar Isaac's next return in a scene where he tells Lena that he's leaving. He has to leave today. But I wanted to point this out because it's such an amazing scene, because Oscar Isaac says just the points that, you know, I need to go today, I'm heading out, you know, now. I just wanted to say, you know, see you, you know, I just wanted you to see me off, and I wanted to just say goodbye. But the acting that Oscar does in this is incredible, because just with the look in his eyes, you already know that he knows. Yeah,
you can see, like, his he always looks sad in this movie.
Yeah.
Because he's so cold. I think one of, like, what you specifically wrote was pain and coldness in his eyes. And he's very short with her as well. Like, it's not, like, his whole posture, he's kind of, like, slouched, but, like, he's got, like, the big, like, the squared shoulders. Like, he's hunching forward to, like, talk to her.
Yes.
But you can still see that he's, like, very, like, guarded. He's very stiff. He's obviously got something that he's not telling her. He goes, I have to leave. And she goes, oh, when? And he's like, now. And she's like,
now.
Right now, it's X in the morning. And he's like, I have to go. You know, like, he's very, I am only giving you the information I need to get through this, because you're my wife, I love you, I need to tell you that I'm leaving, but I don't want to talk to you right now.
Yeah, but the bit that I really love is that she can tell something's not right, you know, the way he talks to her, you know, you've seen how he talks to her previously, which is a really heartfelt scene where they're just chatting about stuff, but the way he's talking to her now, you can tell that something's wrong, even without you can see the coldness and emptiness and sadness in his eyes and stuff like that. And she says, like, you know I love you, right? And he says, I love you too. But the way that he says it, it's not, but he's not lying, he's questioning it.
Yeah, it's like, she's like,
really
no, I love you, right? And he's like, do I?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't even know if I want to. And I think that's
like,
really
you know,
powerful.
I love you, right? And he's, like, sort of responding to her, like, yes, I love you, is what he's trying to come across as, but you hear it as, but do you love me?
Yeah.
Do I want to love you? Like, there's a lot of...
100 questions in one single expression, and I think it's incredible.
God.
Yeah.
The picture paints 1,000 words.
Yeah. I think we're given a lot of insight into the affair without nothing being said, without anything being said. And I think, like, look, I don't want to harp back at the Benedict Wong exposition shit, but, like, because nothing is said about the affair with the Benedict Wong exposition shit, we actually get to just see a lot of really good visual storytelling in that.
Yeah,
and then you get to
because,
sit
like,
with
she's
it.
obviously not going to tell, like, they're like, oh, why would you go in? And that's the one
'cause I
moment
fucked
we
another
think
dude,
she's unreliable. It's like, because I had an affair, my husband found out about it, and then got himself, like, irrevocably hurt.
Yeah.
Eventually, we find out.
He dived headlong into danger because I had sex with some dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting. I also love that we go to that backstory, and that backstory gives you, like, a lot of information about the couple and why each of them would have gone into the Shimmer. And then it cuts back to them finding the site of the tape.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really, like, the way that the story interweaves, the back, like, the... What is it called? When, you know, you go back in time. You look at something... Flashback. The flashbacks are really well intertwined with the storyline, because then you find the site of the area, and...
I think those flashbacks come after they find the area, because...
Do they?
Yeah, because she sleeps, and that's where she sees them.
Oh,
but
interesting.
it's still good because they're closely related to each other.
Yeah, and I genuinely thought that it was like she saw the tape and then they...
No.
No, but
I don't think they did.
Shepard, like, runs down a hallway, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, they find the pool area, and the pool area has, like, the littlest amount of water left in it. It's super interesting to see a pool without water in it, and, like, how the, like, deepness...
Sure, yeah. The ramp, yeah.
Yeah, the ramp.
Unrelated
as
note,
a side note. But that's one of my favorite, like, cinematic shots.
Oh,
is
yeah,
they come
it's...
up and there's this weird fungal growth on the wall
Yeah.
with a skeleton split in half
Mm.
around the abdomen area as a part of this growth. And
Yeah.
you go, oh, that's the dude.
Yeah, the
That's
corpse of the
the
man
dude
they
who
cut
got
open.
cut open.
Yeah,
And
it's
his,
super cool.
his organs were moving, and it's almost like they pushed his body apart because, like, his torso is up on the wall.
Yeah.
And his
Legs
like,
are still in the chair.
butt, yeah, he's still sitting in the chair.
Yeah. Just pretty heavy, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And, like, another really interesting thing is that, like, everything's mutated and all of this cool stuff is happening. His watch is relatively untouched. Like, it's
Yeah.
obviously a non-organic material, and therefore is pretty much being, like...
like most watches are.
Yeah. Leather is technically organic.
That's true. You know what? Yeah, you got me there.
Yeah, it's just... I love the cinematography of it. I love that we immediately see, like, the person that finds the knife, which is super interesting, is Tessa. I'm never going to remember her character's name.
Yeah,
Thank
Josie
you.
Raddick.
Yep. Watch me forget that in 5 seconds.
It's fine.
She finds the knife, sees it, goes to pick it up, gets it, like, far enough out of the water to realize what it is, drops it and goes, I don't want to stay here.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very well done, that sort of visual moment of, oh, shit.
Yeah, we're given a really good insight into time and place in that the previous patrol was here before, and now we know exactly where in different points, and I think that's really interesting and really fun to see done in film.
It's really, really well done.
Yeah, and just in, like, a little note on, like, in a little diversion but still on the same page of characterization, we've been talking a lot about self-destruction, and at this point in the film, Ventress gives, like, a little speech on self-destruction.
Yeah.
I wanted to quickly point it out because it's actually not really psychologically sound.
No.
Humanity's not inherently hardwired to self-destruct. That's an evolutionary process.
Wired into our DNA.
Yeah, and it's not.
No,
Not specifically, but that's not a bad thing because in actual fact, it's not psychologically sound because it's actually more reflective of her than generalizable. It's about her mental state in that she believes that people are self-destructive because of everything she's seen, everything she's lived through, you know.
It's super interesting. You can tell that Ventress sees herself as, like, the head of the group and the leader.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't really do much except ask them questions and have, like, these little moments where she talks about things. Like, she's got this very, like, all right, we knew that wouldn't happen. What do we do next? Or...
Yeah.
Then we'll do that. Like, it's too late in the day for us to move on. Like, she's very, nope, we're sticking to the plan. I'm the boss and I say so type of vibe.
We keep going. Yeah, she never pulls rank on anyone.
But you can tell that she has rank.
Yeah, and she has this air of authority about her that leads people to just follow her, even if they don't like her.
She says it, and everybody disagrees with her, and they're still like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, then it comes, like, I would say the pool scene is one of the scenes that's used most in the marketing for this film.
Promotional art?
Yeah, promotional
there
art.
is something that I will say, and I understand that every shot shouldn't draw on for too long, but I really wish that they would just give us a little bit longer to look at the details. A lot of the, like, really interesting details, like a lot of the mutations and, like, stuff that's happening, is either, like, out of focus or, like, focused on for, like, a short period of time.
Yeah.
Because it's used with the promotional material, you do get a lot of, like, really nice looks at this specific, like, mutated man on the pool wall.
And you've seen it a certain amount of times.
But in the movie, it flicks away so fast. I just wanted to take it all in.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Before I'd even watched any of it, I thought that this, like, figure was going to be like a monster that they face or something like that. Having no knowledge about the film, but I was actually going to use that as a segue to the next point of the thing that pretty much everyone who watches the film talks about, which is the bear.
Oh, the bear.
The bear. Something that we both love and hate in equal measure, I think. Because the bear, I'm going to just say it straight out, the bear is super cool. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy, kind of interesting, like, monster
that
or...
part that makes you realize, oh, this story really, really thought about what it was doing.
Yeah. In a sense, yeah, but it's like, it's this just imposing figure that bears are fucking terrifying in real life. You shouldn't think a bear is cuddly, it's a wild animal, it's dangerous, it's terrifying, but this
And yet,
bear is mutated to all hell, and it's just
could
generally
be
super
even
terrifying.
more terrifying. Now, actually, funnily enough, I feel like what I was talking about with they sort of move on from things too quickly goes really, really well with the bear and the bear's first appearance. You don't get
Yeah.
to see the bear in its first appearance.
No.
You get to hear that it's like cut through the fence wire, and they're like, oh, it's sliced through it like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly all of the women are down and they've all got their guns out and they're looking around, and for whatever stupid reason, Shepard wanders slightly forward from the rest of
Yeah.
the group and disappears into screaming terror.
Well, no,
as she
we get one shot of the bear attacking her and grabbing
Do
her.
we?
Yeah, we do. But it's so weirdly edited that it almost cuts to bear attacking Shepard, and then cuts to everyone reacting, then cuts to Shepard being dragged away by the bear. But
It's
there's
also
no...
what I think is a cardinal sin of movies. It's so fucking dark, you can't see anything.
Sure, yeah. That's not great, but there's also no audio cue to the fact that the bear is there. There's no visual cue, it just appears, or like about 20 meters away from the group, and then disappears. And it's like, this is a really terrible first impression.
Yeah, you don't get to see it stalking them, you don't even get to see it through the fence. You see there is a hole in the fence.
Yes.
Then you see there is a bear. Then you see the bear is close to the team. Like, there's no gradual movement into the attack. It's just like...
Yeah, they also don't
fence,
attack it.
bear,
Attack
attack.
it. They don't shoot the bear. Oh, no one fires a shot. They just
No, I
watch
think
it
there
leave.
was like 1 or 2 shots that go off.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's on me.
But I think that was like Shepard's gun that was going off.
Yeah,
and I
probably.
Feel like
but yeah,
then
it's
there's
one of those
Shepard's
things. They don't really do a whole lot to stop it from taking Shepard. No one does a whole lot to stop it from taking Shepard.
They really needed to do more with the disappearance / attack on Shepard.
Yeah, I actually would agree that not enough is done there.
It's really, really quick. It happens technically off screen. Like, yeah, it happens on screen, but it's really, really dark and you can't see much, and it cuts away from it so quickly that it feels like they just went, boop, Shepard's gone.
Shepard's
Like,
gone. And then we have
gone.
we have tension within the group because Shepard is the only one who held the group together in a sense.
Coming back onto that, she's
Yeah.
the mum of the group that sort of like takes that caretaker role, and they don't really do much with it because they immediately rip that from the group to create tension.
Yeah, and like one half of the group is like, we need to go find her, we need to go find her. The other half of the group is like, she's dead. We gotta keep moving.
Dead. Also, it's the middle of the night. Are you stupid? Like.
Yeah, and so they don't go searching for her because it's the middle of the night. The next morning, the same two, Josie and Anya, are like, we have to go find her. We have to go back. We have to leave. And it creates this divide within the group where one half's like, we have to keep going. We have to reach the lighthouse. The other half is, we need to go back. We've seen enough,
Yeah,
Just surviving would be enough.
Really interesting to me. I think this is the one time that I really like Wong and his exposition.
Yeah.
Because Lena says going back would be slower than continuing forward. Because it already took us X amount of days to get here.
Yeah, 6.
We know it's X amount of days to the coast.
Mm.
And then we just have to follow the coastline out. You
Yeah.
know? That's her, like, very logical explanation for it. And then you cut to Wong and he's like, why would you say that? And she's like, because I wanted to keep going. Like, it wasn't... And we realize that actually that's not a sound decision. Because you know that it's 4 days out. Or 6 days out rather than X amount of days to the coast. And then you have to follow the coast out. You know, that's not... You're out. The coast is just the way to get to the way out,
Yeah,
you know?
the way to get to a way that you're certain that you'll get out. Yeah.
The way to figure out where the hell you are. Not the
Yeah.
way to get out. So, but she makes that decision so quickly.
Yeah, but then it's also good that in this, situation, it's the most responsible choice any of them have made.
Yeah, it
Or
feels really,
decision.
really responsible, and then you cut to Wong, and you realize that it was incredibly emotionally, minded, which is what I really like about his exposition specifically in that part, is like, oh, yeah, that's logical, she's put it in a very logical way, and then it's like, why would you say that? She's like, because I wasn't ready to leave,
But yeah, and I will say, just for context, because it'll be a part of what I talk about a little later on, but in this debating scene where they're deciding what they want to do, either go to the lighthouse or head back. Anya, again, is like just super unreasonable about it. She just wants to leave without thinking about like the consequences of going back the way they came or anything like that. And it's one of these situations where she's just past this point of where she's like, I'm not gonna reason with these people. I'm gonna be angry about whatever decision we make. And if I'm provided with reason, then I'm not gonna listen to it because it doesn't fit what I want. And that's why she started to grate on me a little bit. And I've got a little point just a little bit further because as they're traveling they see a hint of Shepard's gear and they're like, oh, Shepard is probably this way, we could probably track her, and they come to a decision that Lena's gonna go check it out. And this is the point where I was just like, oh god, because in every other situation Anya is like has been defiant or stubborn the entire way.
Literally the epitome of I am rebelling because I don't want to do your idea. I only want it to be my idea.
In this scene, she goes, I'm coming with you. Lena goes, no. And she's like, all right, that's it. And she leaves it alone. She doesn't go with her or investigate. And it's the only time she conforms, and it doesn't make sense. And that's why I find her character a little bit rocky in certain situations.
Yeah, I suppose, like, as a suspension of disbelief argument, playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wanting to go and find Shepard was her idea, so it probably feels to her the fact that they said, no, we're not going to go find Shepard, she's obviously dead. Yeah. And then went, okay, we'll send Lena to go look for her. She was like, yeah, they're doing my thing. Like,
yeah, and in that sense, that's fine. That's fair enough.
That's like the way that I would reason it specifically. Also, they're all going slowly insane, so you get a little bit of leeway with the way that they're acting.
Yeah, sure.
But then when they find Shepard, I once again stop rushing really emotional moments.
Yeah, we see her corpse like once, and then she's just like, oh, she's dead. Cool, moving on.
It's also like a timeline thing. Is like the blood from like that's coming from her nose is already like looks kind of green and mossy. Like, how long has she been there?
Who knows?
What's happening?
We don't know, really.
For like 2 seconds, there's this thing where Lena's like walking alone and she sees a deer, and then next to it she sees a deer that's like dying and decaying, and they're like, cool, you get to see that for 2 seconds. You get to see it in focus for like half of that, and then they just wander off, and I'm like, oh, we're not gonna, okay. Like, everything that's really visually nice and cinematic. Thank you about this movie. I feel like they should just give it like 1 more second to breathe.
Yeah, let it live in those moments.
The movie is really, really well paced, but there are just certain bits that feel rushed.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, moving on from this point, we head to the small town.
Oh yes.
Where we get a bigger insight into what's going on within the Shimmer.
Radic?
Yes.
Yep, she goes on about like the human Hox gene and how she's figured out that things aren't getting like disappeared or blocked, like all of their receivers are getting scrambled rather than like blocked or intercepted. Scrambled.
Yeah, it's being reflected.
Yeah, refracted. And then they talk about how the plants are mimicking the human Hox gene, and because basically in this area there are all of these plants that look like people. People, yeah. Which is really, really eerie when there's just one of them chilling in the background and you don't know whether or not it's going to come alive. Yeah. And like they sort of talk about how everything's being refracted, even DNA, and that's why the plants have the Hox gene and know where to put shoulders and hips and yada yada yada. And it's a really, really interesting like moment where she's like, aha, as a scientist. I really liked it.
Yeah. And I will say, for people who figure this out early, or only figured it out until here, we're actually, another super awesome little detail, is that all the light that actually passes through the Shimmer is actually reflected like it's reflected through a prism. So in the background you'll see like just rainbow, and that's because light is being reflected through a prism.
Yeah, and even where we didn't say that the light is being reflected through a prism, we were talking about how much like it's colorful and vibrant and there's like a lot of stuff happening. The lighting really lends to that in such a subtle way until you're going back and going, ooh, it's prismatic. And then, you know, that's, like I said, a really, really lovely moment where they talk about, like, they have that I just really like the fact that they're scientists and they're allowed to like geek out about science,
Yeah.
even though it's a very dire situation. Like it's very, very, if you've ever met someone who does anything scientific, accurate.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, I figured out the thing. How interesting is this? Let me info dump about it really quick. Like,
Yeah, I think it's always lovely to see people passionate about stuff, and it lends to their characters that they would be excited, or not excited, but interested at the very least, about the shimmer refracting, light and waves and everything, because it comes from a place of science, not only biology, but also physics, which are both areas in which Josie and Lena are experts in.
yeah, which is super cool to see.
Yeah, but in this town we get the second meeting of the bear, which I liked so much more than the first, because we're actually...
Well, yeah. I like it, but I also dislike it for certain reasons.
Yeah.
But before they get to the bear, they have this moment where we really, 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 at this point, get to see that Anya is going crazy.
Yeah.
And I wish this was foreshadowed a little sooner than, like, 2 scenes before. Because they're all sitting down and they're turning around and basically deciding that they're going to camp out in the living room of this house and like camp there for the night. And they're like, oh, secure all the windows and doors. And Anya sits on a couch and looks at her hands, but her hands are out of focus.
Yes, and it's a really beautiful use of focus, honestly.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. To me, it's slightly annoying because I'm like...
Yeah, well, it's this one of these things. You got to use focus very sparingly, because if you're constantly changing focus on things that people are looking at, then you're going to make them feel sick.
Exactly.
And that's
and
a
so,
really bad idea.
I have a love-hate relationship with the focus in this movie.
Yeah. Oh man, you're going to hate Army of the Dead then.
Ugh, jeez.
We will get around to reviewing that, but not anytime.
Basically, the reason that I have a love-hate relationship to it is because I'm one of those people who, you've heard me say it, I just want them to give it a little more. I want to be able to look at the thing.
Yeah.
I really want to be able to like pause the screen and like dissect that specific image. But a lot of the like
well, in that case, you're going to love Arrival.
Shush, sir. You're like,
What were you saying? Sorry.
I'm just, for, everybody who can't see me because this is a podcast, I'm making little crab hands to try and remember what my point was.
Right.
When she sits there, I really wish that it was slightly in focus, or like, I get that it's out of focus and it makes sense for Anya's descent, but also like a lot of the like cosmic horrors and like the very, very quick and rapid changes, whether mentally or physically, to the women happen out of focus.
Yeah, actually, out of focus or just out of frame.
Out of focus or out of frame.
Yeah.
And I get that it's cosmic horror, but like jumping ahead a little bit just to come back to make my point is with Radix character.
Yeah. You're all good.
I will eventually remember her name.
And then it won't matter because we'll be on to something else.
Yeah, she'll have like vines in her arms. Except we never get to see the vines in focus. They come up really, really quickly. So at first, they look like little cuts, just like her cuts have gone green on her arms. Yeah. And then the next time you see them, you're like, oh, maybe that's not green. Maybe there's something on her. And then you don't see her arms for a couple shots. Yeah. And then they come back to the shot, and suddenly they're like out of focus. She's running, and they're growing at exponential speed. And I'm like, okay.
And I will say, just so that I can play devil's advocate here, is that I assume this is probably because they want the cinematographer and director, or everyone involved in this film, probably wanted to convey more the sense of uncertainty, more so than just giving you the answer, because ultimately we don't have, other than the bear and the crocodile to a certain extent, we don't have a big bad villain. Really.
No, yeah.
So we're given this sense that we're being made to feel not confused, but uncertain about everything that's going on, or unaware of everything that's going on. You might see one thing, but then miss the next thing, and you're just like, you don't have the full picture, so you want to feel, they want you to feel like you're in the dark on certain things, which is fair. And with Anya, it's not even that something is actually happening to her, it's in her head, and so we have to illustrate that some way. Because if we actually do it to her...
and I really like that we have that moment. I just wish that, that moment had come a little sooner. Coming back to my point. Yeah. It feels like they foreshadow it, and then, the next scene is her going crazy. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, a lot of the situations are quite drastically
We didn't
fast.
leave Chekhov's gun cold very long.
Yeah. No, not really. Getting onto this scene where she goes crazy, she ties the crew to a chair. Two chairs, not all to one chair. They're not all just sitting on each other's laps tied together. That would be weird.
They're all sitting on separate chairs.
Yeah.
They're all bound and at Anya's mercy.
Yeah, and she's all like, maybe I'm going crazy, maybe you're going crazy. You know, she's figured out that Kane is Lena's husband, and
Yeah, which I think is what sort of was the catalyst for her outburst. Definitely sped up the outburst.
Sure,
Because she finds a locket with Lena and Kane in it, or Lena has this locket that's been on her the entire movie, which has a picture of Kane in it, and she finds the locket, wakes Lena up, asks her a couple questions about it. Lena goes, "What's going on?" And she goes, "You don't get to ask the question," and knocks her out with the butt of the rifle.
Yeah, it's like, this is not a very diplomatic way to solve a problem, but at this point she's gone mad, so it doesn't matter.
And, like, I think you thought that, like, the inconsistency of what she was saying shows her insanity.
Well, I found it ironic, but then I also, like, in a sense of, like, just basic story structure, I found that a little annoying as well, because it was just like she lacks any sort of self-awareness, that she can't even see that the things that she's saying
Which is funny.
indications.
I disagree with you there. I really liked that. I liked the fact that she was like, you know, I've tied you to these chairs because I don't know. Like, Ventress knew that this was your husband. Like, she's been lying to us too. Did you know? And she looks at Radix character.
Yes.
And she's like, did you know? And she like shakes her head and makes like a little sob noise. And she's like, oh, I don't know if I can trust anyone. Like, your husband was cutting someone open in that film. What if you do that to me? Like, what if I let you go and you immediately tie me down and cut me open?
Yeah.
What if I do it before you can get to it? And I'm like, oh, like, I like this, the fact that you can hear in what she's saying, the fact that she switched from I've tied you up for my safety to I am going to do this so you can't do it to me later.
Yeah.
Like, she feels like she's doing this all as like a preemptive strike, but it's incredibly unhinged.
Yes.
And I really, really love the like descent.
Sure, and yeah, ultimately it's still a pretty decent descent, though quick and, for me, just annoying. You know, I just found it a little annoying, but that's just me. That doesn't matter. But we get the second instance of the bear at this point, which I also feel is a little convenient, because they have no way of escaping this situation, and the bear comes back.
Yeah, it definitely is like, oh look, plot.
Yeah, plot bear. He's here. He's here to, in a way, to save the day.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's also like, the bear's appearance is super cool, because it's like, we've learned that it had like taken some of Shepard's blood and had now begun to like replicate her voice in a certain sense.
There
and
was this whole thing,
yeah.
and I really, if we had focused for 2 seconds longer on Shepard's body, her throat is ripped out.
Yes.
And the bear shows up and can use her voice.
Yeah,
like,
well, its moans
it.
become her voice in a weird way.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the way that it calls out to people, it sounds like Shepard saying, help me.
Yeah.
And like from far away, it sounds like Shepard. Up close, it sounds like an incredibly distorted recording of Shepard.
Yeah, and that, you know, we're not gonna, like, we don't want to just go through point to point of the film, but that causes Anya to leave and then be, well, brutalized, and then a second bear attack, but this one's more slow and actually takes the time to build tension.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's super good. It's really, really daunting to watch, you know, because it sniffs around, it bites into Josie, and, you know, does a bunch of terrible things to her, like rips through her and stuff, and then Anya comes back. Anya then dies.
Yeah.
And gets her, like,
so we think that
out.
Anya's died off screen because we hear her screaming, and then the bear walks in. And what I really loved about the bear was, yeah, the CGI for the bear was a little off. But
Yeah,
honestly,
well, only in one situation where it's
yeah.
lit,
Honestly,
illuminated by the floodlight.
a
It just
lot
looks
of
terrible.
CGI monsters, whether they be more realistic or more unrealistic, always have the issue where as soon as you've seen them in their entirety, they lose a little bit of their like scariness.
Yeah,
That's just something that happens. The unknown is always a little bit spookier than the CGI monster.
yeah.
But
Well, John
they,
Carpenter said that like he didn't believe in the "don't show your monsters" thing. He believed more in the you usually shouldn't show your monster, but if you're gonna show your monster, make sure it's a fucking good one. And I think this bear is definitely a good one.
And the reason that I really, really love the bear, despite the CGI issues, is because it's very, very visually clear that it is decaying while still alive. You can see its skull, and then you quickly realize that whatever has happened to it, it can't see or smell.
Yes.
Which is then in the scene, not to point by point it, but they're like, don't react, don't make a noise, because it's making the like help me noise of Shepherd, and then like not sniffing, but it test nibbles. It test nibbles on Radek, because it's trying to figure out if I bite this, will it move? Is it actually something I can eat? Because it can't see or smell, so it's doing its best to like bump into things and figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, in that sense, it's all really, really well done. The tension is really high in this moment, and you actually get a really good sense of dread. Just looking at the time, I'm thinking that we'll probably run through to the end.
Yeah, there's not much that happens. It kind of ramps up from here anyway.
Yeah, just as like a quick summary, we get to the point where the bear is killed. The group get away, not with Anya. Anya dies and is dead. Ventress chooses to leave on her own because she kind of can't trust anybody else, and
it's specifically, she's like, everybody's obviously getting affected. I want to be the same person who started this journey at the end of it, and then she runs off. And
then Josie kind of just like accepts that this is the end, and she just fades away.
She says something like,
she disappears.
Ventress wants to face it, you want to fight it, I don't want either of those things, and then disappears into nothing, which I too would just peace out. Like, honestly, that was super traumatic. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to exist. Goodbye. Like,
yeah, it's a pretty nihilistic situation no matter how you look at it. It's terrible. What can you do? So yeah. But then we'll head up to the lighthouse. So Lena finally reaches the lighthouse.
There are so many human bones just like arranged artfully outside of the lighthouse. Don't know why.
But we are given an insight to the final second last big twist of the film, which is that the Kane that came home isn't the same Kane that left.
It is, in fact, a duplicate.
A duplicate, yeah. And this is really nicely done because, you know, the only perspective from Kane that we get is through the camcorder videos where what he records, so we get even less information than Lena provides from Kane, from his journey. And then, you know, his video slowly starts to become just more like almost ritualistic until it comes to the last video.
Yeah, he's sitting there, he's talking, he's obviously having the biggest identity crisis that anybody's ever had in their entire life. And then he looks off camera and says, like, when you get out, you need to find Lena, you need to go, like, da-da-da-da-da, like, giving all of these instructions to someone off camera.
Yeah.
And then he pulls a flash bomb on
phosphorus
himself.
Grenade, yes.
Oh, thank you. There you go. Same thing. And it...
Sort of.
Like, whatever. It goes
Not
off.
really.
There's a big bright light. Matter. He becomes dead. You can see sort of...
Yeah.
But, like, it's really interesting because when she walks in, there's, like, a very charred, like, body.
Yeah, there's a charred
corpse. And through
corpse.
watching the tape, you realize that that charred body is Kane.
Yeah.
And you sort of have this moment where, oh, but Kane is dying.
Kane is here.
He's got, like, he's not dead, he's dying.
Yeah.
And then from out of the background steps duplicate Kane.
Duplicate.
And we get a really nice reaction from Lena here where she sort of goes, like, she has this moment where you can see her go through, like, the stages of grief, and she's, like, denial and, like, like, it's very interesting.
Yeah, she freaks out and, like, has to take everything on. However, this leads to my second section of Will's pointless research. Because first time watching it, it did irk me that She turns this this camcorder on, and it's still on. It still has power.
It's not off. It's not like she powers it up.
No, it was on standby, and she just flips open the camera, and then it's on and playing the video, the last bits of video that it has. And as someone who works with camera equipment, I wanted to look into this. So the camcorder, once I did a little bit of like research, the camcorder's not real. It's a prop. And that, of course, makes sense. Fucking duh. It's a prop. It's in a movie, it's probably a prop. It's probably not real because it's a military, like, issue camera. However, the camcorder that's underneath all the prop stuff is real. And it's, you know, it's a pretty substandard camera that you could probably buy at JB Hi-Fi if you're ever there. That's the yellow building.
Oh my god.
But it has a pretty standard battery. So a Canon battery of that same size with a wattage of about 2000, which is actually pretty generous for a camera battery, has about a battery life of about an hour 30 minutes on continuous filming. I then rewatched the film and then this was confirmed when in the mess hall scene with Radek's camcorder, it has about an hour and 28 minutes of battery life. This camera was on standby the camera that Kane had was on standby for 4 months at least.
Yay! The only question I have about your research here is obviously she feels like
sound. It's sound research.
I'm aware. She feels like she was only in there for like 8 or 10 days or whatever she says.
Yes.
But she was in there close to 3 months or whatever they end up, you know, saying at the very end.
But I've also done this.
Oh.
Because there is a line in the film where when Josie or Radek asks how long he had been in there, Lena says theoretically as long as a year.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, so the 4 months does account for the time dilation.
Yes. We also know that Lena stopped sending messages stopped asking for reports 6 months into his 12-month deployment, which gives me the indication that the camera was probably being used for at least 4 months.
Jesus, okay.
So as I say, my
I'm like, I have one question, you're like, it's sound.
It's sound. You
Don't-
can't...
don't at me.
This is Will's pointless research, alright? This is my bit. This is the bit where I talk about bullshit that I researched, and I'm going to do it for everything. When we get to Paddington, you better believe that I'm going to have pointless research for that.
The stitching on his stuffing was ever so off by a millimeter.
Paddington's a real bear in the Paddington movies. We're not doing that.
I've never seen the Paddington movies.
Well,
okay,
you will.
We're back. We're getting tangenting.
This doesn't matter. But anyway, that's just my pointless research. Doesn't matter ultimately
But even like on first watch, immediate question: how does that camera still work?
If Alex
what battery life does it have?
Here's the thing: it's again, like I said with the other pointless research on how Kane got home. If Alex Garland said there were other batteries in his bag of phosphorus grenades, then I'd be like, cool, perfect, love it, love your film.
If he just didn't show her pressing.
I said that with a lot of like anger.
Bitterness.
Yeah, bitterness. I don't actually mean that. I'd be like, yeah, sweet.
Yeah, but you know, like, if he'd just been like, oh yeah, we just cut out the scene where she was booting it up because it took too long in the film's runtime.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And, like, that doesn't matter. Doesn't mean anything to me. That's okay. I do this research because I find it fun. And I also studied scientific research in my bachelor's degree, so I have to use it at some point. Well, is it?
He's big brain, guys.
This is what I'm using it for.
I think I like to call him my smart idiot. So.
How did a guy get home without a passport, and why did that battery work? That's what I've been using my scientific research on. Doesn't
Incredibly important groundbreaking information.
Yeah.
Moving on
to actually the point of
this like hole, which is the point of impact for the Shimmer, which I think I can't remember where in the
Back to the
scene.
lighthouse.
It might be at the very end, but they show like whatever it is hitting the lighthouse and impacting.
That's
and
right
then you
at the
get to
start
see,
of the film.
Oh, is it?
It's one of the first frames we actually see.
Cool. I don't have a concept of time.
That's okay.
We'll just
Neither does
continue.
this film. Which is good. Which is a good thing.
Like, you see the point of impact, and everything in the lighthouse is, like, pale white, like, almost like bleached coral vibes.
Yeah.
Except this hole.
Yeah.
Which is very, very black, for whatever reason. It's, like, dark and
Well, yeah, it's a cave, so it creates shadow.
And we come in, and Ventress is in the cave. She's just chilling.
Yes.
And my one question is, did you eat the entity?
I think it went
What
in
happened?
her.
Because she's like, it's unlike us. It's inside me now. And then, like...
And then it leaves out her mouth, yeah.
How?
I think it was just like, well, look, we could never know what happened there. We could ultimately ask for another movie where it's just what did Ventress do in that cave for, like, the hour that it took Lena to get
You could write at least 6 books, from this, and that's each of the perspectives of all of the different main characters.
Sure, but most people wouldn't read it, because it's just like, it's a lot of the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
With little different bits, but that's okay.
I'm a special person.
That doesn't matter, but yeah, I guess, like, I assume it just went into her. She didn't eat it like it was like a Toblerone.
Tasty entity.
Yeah.
Yum.
Like, we don't know what happens, but I assume based on suspension of disbelief or just reasonable thought, it was just like, I am this formless entity. In I go. And, that's about it.
Yeah. And then she turns into, like, light. And that's a really, really nice effect.
Yeah.
That happens. And eventually, whatever, it's turning into light, though it's pulsing. And I like it because it kind of comes with the prismatic, like, everything's refracting. It's got a very, like, kaleidoscope feel to it.
Yes.
In that moment.
I think it's one of the best looking, like, aliens to date of, like, modern films. I think it's one of the best looking aliens ever.
Exactly. I really, really liked it. Yeah. For what it was trying to do and how modern it is, it really doesn't date itself, which is quite nice.
Yes.
I'm moving on really quickly because I am conscious of time. It takes a bit of blood from Lena's eye and then creates what I really, really like to call the morph suit entity.
Oh, the morph suit entity? A dupla Lena.
Yeah, well,
not yet.
A mannequin.
That
is the same color as everything else in the cave, which is like that bluey, blacky, like, slightly skin texture-y vibe. And then she sort of sees it, she gets all freaked out. She runs out into the white lighthouse room, and it follows her. Yeah. And it immediately becomes, like, 10% less real.
Does it? I think it becomes more real. I think, like, the CG of it,
I guess
it looks
for me,
better
it's like
in the well-lit room.
Well, it in the dark room, it felt more real to me because it was the same color as, like, everything else that was around it. So for me, it fit better into that scene. You take it out into the white room, and I'm like, oh, it's someone wearing latex. Like.
I guess so. Yeah. For me, it looked more CG in the cave because it was reflecting light that wasn't coming from the opening to the cave, so it almost had this, like, well, from what I've written here in the notes, it has like a Sim from The Sims 2 kind of vibe.
That is actually such a good description.
Basically, she's getting attacked by a Sim.
Yep.
Or not even attacked, but it's just like, it's just copying her. And I would say during...
Is it though?
Sort of, yeah, like, sure, there are the bits where she hits it with a tripod and it punches her in the face. Sure. Yeah. And that's not really copying, is it? But it's...
Sometimes where it decides to mirror her. And then there's sometimes where it decides to, like, copy her. And it's...
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna dismiss it almost as a point of, because it's its own entity still. It's not just a copy of her. So, yeah, in that sense. But to kind of speed it up, we get the ending where she mimics Kane's suicide, but giving the phosphorus grenade to the entity and setting it off.
Yeah.
In this action, she, escapes and destroys the Shimmer that we know of, thus stopping the expanse of the Shimmer and putting an end to it altogether in a very visually striking and cinematically poetic ending of the main conflict. We do get a little bit at the end where she's returned to the research base talking to Benedict Wong, and then we get a little bit at the end where she's talking to Kane again, or the copy Kane.
And they have this sort of area where, at this point, if you haven't noticed it already, because it has actually been noticeable during both the exposition moments and the film, Lena has one of the other girls' tattoos, which is super interesting to me. And they do a callback to the glass, where she picks up a glass, she drinks from it, she puts it down, and there's no blood. And I really liked that sort of, like, coming full circle of the themes in the movie.
With the film coming to an end, we are left with like a final moment between Kane and Lena where we're left to question a great deal. We know that that's not the real Kane, but then he asks her, "Are you Lena?" And we're left wondering if she's only been affected by the Shimmer or if she is actually the copy,
but
which is really cool.
The thing about that where I think that they could have made this more ambiguous about whether or not she was the copy. She's knocked out once, if not twice, during the fight, quote unquote, fight with the copy. But it's all while the copy still looks like someone wearing latex.
Yes.
Like, it isn't until she puts the flash bomb in its hands that it starts taking on her appearance, which I thought was really cool, that it was like you have to touch and like sequence the DNA and yada yada yada. But it leads to me in like afterthought less validness to the open-endedness of whether or not that's Lena, because unlike with Kane, where his double was his double despite the fact that they weren't touching, we see that the copy is still the copy during the fight and when she's escaping. It doesn't fully ever become her, and therefore there's not the same, is it actually Lena or is it the copy that we have with Kane?
Yeah, and in that sense, like, we know that it's Lena to a certain extent, and when it's not quite as ambiguous as it could have been, but that's fine. It can be a little ambiguous.
I really like the way that they and like obviously she says, "Are you Lena?" She doesn't answer. She just pulls not Kane into a hug.
Yeah.
And then the sort of last bits before the credits, and the credits are actually really pretty,
yes,
they're hugging and their eyes start glowing. And what I found really interesting was the way that they've done the CGI with the eyes. Kane's eyes look like they're forming, like they look like they're growing into his eye sockets.
Into his
Whereas Lena's look like they just get lit from like the inside out, you know? Like, which I thought was interesting because he's the copy and like he might still be forming, even though he's obviously formed. I just thought it was really interesting the different way that they played with the glowing eyes for each of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that said, shall we get to our final thoughts?
Yeah, I got a couple things, summary, that I might just run through. What I thought was interesting was the difference between the insanity that we're shown of the soldiers and the insanity of our scientists.
Yeah.
The soldiers all seem to be very reverent and happy to cut open their friend. And obviously we don't get to see any of them besides Kane after that point, but they all seem quite uniform in their like cult-like insanity. Whereas the girls all go the other way, where especially the second that Shepard's pulled away, they all completely split apart and there's no longer any group cohesion.
And it could be down to their military training where you're dependent on your team. And working with the team is the most important thing. Whereas a group of scientists, individual minds and
endeavors and different
pushes out forward more
specialties. Exactly. I thought that was really interesting that they had that sort of like, the soldiers are soldiers and they're doing this because they were asked to, whereas the scientists are scientists and they're doing this because they have to, but also because they have their own reasons. And it was a really interesting look. No one really seems that fussed about the Shimmer. Like, yes, we have this whole, like, base to it, and we have the exposition lads at the end. But, like, we never have just, like, a side character who is unnamed, who's, like, worryingly looking at the Shimmer. Like, it's all about the main cast. Like, the main 5 ladies and Oscar.
Kane.
Sorry.
Yeah, everyone's very casual about the Shimmer. You see people just going about their daily, like, routines and work. Well, to be fair, there is a line later where people like go to bed in the fetal position and stuff like that, or earlier in the film. But it's all it's all dialogue. So do we trust it? You know,
exactly.
Or does it really have any weight? And not really.
It feels like at the very end of the movie, I was like, you know, we do get a bit of our lovely exposition man. And, like, he has a gaggle of people just, like, crowding at the window to, like, stare at Lena as he asks her questions.
That was weird.
Yeah, other than that,
kind of cool, though. Really nice composition, but weird.
It was really, really well done, but in thought, what are you all doing here? Wouldn't this be, like, super top secret information? Like, the Oscar copy getting out, like, with all of the, like, murdery things happening in the bear was one of my last comments as well. Like, just belatedly, there was so much happening. How did he manage to get out unscathed?
Yeah.
besides internal organ failure.
That goes into my, pointless research. There's just a big period of space where he gets from one place to another,
Yeah.
miraculously unharmed.
A lot of well-known actors in this, and they're all given like very interesting roles. Like, I feel like they're all utilized really, really well, and in ways that we haven't really seen them utilized before. Like, to me, Tessa Thompson is a very specific, very grand character, and I really, really love her. But she's always like that badass bitch. And in this, she's more timid, and it was
Timid
really
and
interesting
passive,
to see.
yeah.
I'm just running through these. I feel like we don't need to discuss them. I apologize if I feel pushy, but
No, that's okay.
Kane, not Kane's internal organs. The second that the Shimmer dies, he's suddenly fine again.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. It's one of those things that's left ambiguous, and I understand it's left ambiguous. But I was just like, oh, okay, so he was connected to the Shimmer, but now that the Shimmer is dead, he's like, not about it. Like, what's happening there? And Lena seems so like, you're not Kane. No, I'm not, but you're Lena, right? Oh, my boy. Like, she just immediately accepts that he's a double, and she's just gonna live like that, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else. I have, like, some things can be forgiven as movie magic. Like, of course Kane knows nothing and keeps saying, I don't know. He's a copy.
Yeah.
But also then, like, he's a copy. How the fuck did you know where the house was? Like, there's a couple things there. That, like,
there's
gotta
a lot
let
of stuff.
some things go because of movie magic. But there are a few things that will always irk me, e.g., the battery and the sudden miraculous organ failure going away and all of his vitals popping back up as normal.
Yes. So as we kind of wind down to the end of this episode, what do you want to give it on a rating scale?
Alrighty, so we've got a rating scale of 1 to 10, and I thought this movie was about a 6 out of 10 fractals. I felt like it was a really, really good movie. It's one that I would definitely rewatch and suggest people watch, obviously giving them warnings about the fact that it's horror and it's very unsettling. But it's one of those ones that it's good to enjoy and to, like, pick out the little Easter eggs, but I wouldn't look too hard at it. I wouldn't try and dig for the deeper, like, lore of the world and, like, rules of how everything works.
Yeah, and I have given it a 7 out of 10 fractals just because, even with my criticisms of it, I could criticize it, till the cows come home, but I still enjoyed it. I've watched it 4 times now within this year, and every single time I've really enjoyed it. At certain points I've enjoyed it less or more, just depending on, things that I've noticed.
The mentality that you went into it, I suppose. Absolutely.
But I still enjoy it. I'll probably watch it again at some point, and I'm going to read the book now. So, yeah.
It was super exciting. I hope you guys, if you've stayed to this point, I know that we've rambled on for a really long time. Thank you for listening. This has been super fun. There's, we're going to do a couple more of these. Did we want to give a little hint?
Yeah. Well, that was what I was, leading up to. So... every single week we're going to try and review a movie, and we thought we'd start providing, this is our first episode, we thought we'd provide you guys with little hints going along to our next one. So for next week, if you want to try and guess what we're watching, we're going to be watching another film where the protagonist goes to great lengths to help a loved one in a coma.
Put your guesses down below. It's going to be super interesting to see if anyone can guess or, how that all works out.
I'd be surprised.
Oh, God, people are so smart.
Yeah.
They always...
I'd be pleasantly surprised, but I would be surprised.
Yeah, pleasantly surprised. But, people are just smart. I don't know. I'm having a moment here where I'm like, I will always feel dumb compared to other people because people are just so deep and smart to me. But this was really, really fun. I'm really excited to look at our next movie and do it again. This movie was picked by Will, and the next movie was picked by me. And that's going to be super interesting to sort of dissect as well.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.